All the people in the village heard the screaming and barking. Alarmed by the situation, they went to see what it was, and when they got closer to the noises, they saw a procession taking place and some people going towards the cemetery to carry out a burial. Some children were present, but they were unaware of the seriousness of the situation and ran away without anyone noticing. The children were running and playing around the cemetery until they noticed a dog lying on one of the tombstones. They approached the animal, and as they got closer, the dog growled and barked loudly, frightening them. They walked away a little scared when they heard a woman's raspy voice coming from behind, saying that that dog was lying on the tombstone of its deceased owner and that it hadn't left since his death. The children were a little scared by the lady's sudden appearance, but they were moved by the dog's story. The lady noticed the children's interest and continued telling them about the dog, saying that he was very skittish and angry, but explained that before, he was a docile animal, that he became like that due to the loss of the owner. However, he had never bitten anyone and acted that way because he didn't want to leave his friend's side. The woman said he was called Sergeant and that his master's death was really very tragic. The children looked at the lady as if she were going to tell them a horror story, but what she said took a very different turn. She said the man was a highly respected police officer in the city who had died under mysterious circumstances. In the first few weeks, when they tried to get the dog out of the tombstone, people were scared by his reaction, thinking they might be attacked, but he wouldn't do that. He just wanted them not to take him away. When they tried to call the animal shelter to rescue the dog, he was gone. He had gone to a barn on an abandoned farm next to the cemetery, and when he realized that they were no longer looking for him, he returned to stay at the grave. At first, he barked and cried incessantly, as if he was asking his owner to come back. But when he realized that it was useless, he decided to stop barking. He just stayed by his owner's side every day, enjoying his solitude. "And how did the policeman die?" asked one of the boys. The children were excited to hear a mysterious story about the policeman's death, but the woman only said that he was found dead, hanging from a tree in the forest, as he was very depressed about his life. Suddenly, it was possible to hear someone shouting for the children, looking for them. They looked at the lady and ran away. It was winter, but the dog remained strong and persisted despite the cold, with the help of some people from the cemetery who fed him so that he would not starve. Time passed, and he stopped barking at the people that approached. He started to be calm and loving with each one that passed and offered him some food or water. There was a lake that could be accessed by a path in the cemetery, where Sergeant liked to go sometimes to remember the best times he had with his owner when they were fishing there. One night, the dog was sleeping, and there was no light on, just the moonlight that illuminated the surroundings. Suddenly, a car approached on the road and parked in a hidden spot near the entrance to the cemetery. Two men got out of the car. They opened the trunk and removed a large black bag that looked heavy. They broke the padlock that secured the door and entered the cemetery, carrying the bag together, heading towards the path to the lake. They walked until they reached the shore of the lake and stopped for a couple of minutes to smoke a cigarette, when one of them said, "We have to keep walking, otherwise someone will notice." They put out the cigarette, and when they were going to get the bag to dump it in the river, Sergeant arrived and started to bite the arms of one of the men, who fell to the ground and started to fight with the dog. The other man grabbed a knife, pulled Sergeant and threw him back, trying to stab him. He managed to make a cut near the dog's eye, but it beat him hard on his leg, causing the man to fall down screaming in pain. Sergeant began to howl at a surreal height, which managed to reach the ears of a police vehicle passing near the cemetery. The man had fainted from the pain, and Sergeant ran to the door to get the attention of the police. The policemen were investigating with their flashlights on to find out what was happening for Sergeant to howl like that. They looked at the door and realized that it had been broken into. Sergeant barked once more and took off running towards the trail. The cops walked towards him with guns in their hands. They went along the trail, and when they arrived, they saw the two men lying on the ground with their arms and legs bleeding from the bites. They contacted backup and looked around to see where Sergeant was, but he had fled. After some time, Sergeant returned to his routine of spending his days at his owner's tombstone, and when he arrived, there was a beautiful doghouse made for him, with a plate containing his name. It was a gesture of gratitude for the dog's act that helped the police to arrest two criminals and prevent them from dumping the body of a young girl in the lake on that full moon night. The police team knew Sergeant and his story with the owner, who had worked with them for many years. They wanted to pay homage to the dog who was so brave and was always loyal to his owner. A few months later, one morning, the group of children who had gone to the cemetery on the day of the procession were again playing on the cemetery lawns, hoping to meet the dog or the mysterious old lady again. They approached the police officer's grave and saw the dog from afar. This time, when they got close to the dog, he treated them with affection and even played with them for a while when they heard the raspy voice of that same lady. She rounded up the children and asked if they would like to hear the story of the hero dog Sergeant became. The children accepted the invitation excitedly and sat on the lawn to listen better. The woman told everything that happened that night at the lake, and the dog approached, as if he were listening to the story as well. When the lady finished telling the story, the children clapped their hands and shouted, celebrating Sergeant's heroism as he barked happily. The woman smiled at the joy of the children while stroking the head of that little hero dog. If you know any similar stories, write about it in the comments, like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more fantastic stories.